In 2014, ABC News ranked Acadia National Park as the most favorite place in America. This is why I wanted to inform you about this unique plot of land on the coast of Maine that's been a favorite of families and famous people for generations, even though you probably have never heard of it. By covering the history, major sightseeing aspects, and recreational activities, I'm going to inform you about this area. I was fortunate enough to grow up on MDI, which encompasses most of Acadia, and it's crazy to think that visionaries such as John D. Rockefeller actually had enough insight in order to protect and preserve the land in order for all of us to enjoy. So therefore, that is why I want to inform you about this. First of all, I think it is important to note that the location of Maine, is located in the Northeast. And Maine actually once upon a time was a part of Massachusetts, but it eventually broke off. And the island is mid-central coast, and the major town that's a part of Acadia National Park is called Bar Harbor. And the island itself is also known as Mount Desert Island, and it's shaped like a horseshoe from a map, as you can see. The Bar Harbor Chamber of Commerce states that Mount Desert Island is one of the largest islands in the United States Atlantic seaboard, measuring 28 miles across east to west. And the Acadia National Park cites that Acadia consists of more than 47,000 acres and preserves more than 24 glacially sculpted mountains and valleys, glacial lakes, ponds, and one fjord known as Somme Sound, which I will tell you about later. And Acadia National Park gets approximately 3 million visitors a year. So, first area I'd like to cover with you is the history of Mount Desert Island and Acadia National Park. As you might not initially think, it was actually first inhabited by Native Americans. It was the Wabanaki Indians. There also might have been 2 groups of Indians actually in the Bar Harbor area. They're not quite sure or quite certain, but the National Park Service notes that deep shell heaps indicate Native American encampments dating back 5,000 years. It's also important to note that Irish immigrants also came over on the way to Boston. They were sailing and they shipwrecked, and a lot of them just stayed on Mount Desert Island, Acadia National Park, instead of going all the way to Boston. So there's an influx of Irish immigrants as well. And by the 1800s, a lot of lobstering, boat building, and artists came to the island, also known as Acadia National Park. And by 1900s, affluent summer people that wanted to escape the city and get into the outdoors started coming up and eventually started building cottages and then became part-time seasonal residents on the island, and it's like that today as well. And some notable tenants of the island are the Rockefellers, Astors, Morgans, and Vanderbilts, to name a few. George B. Dorr and Charles Eliot were some of the people who made it their life's mission to protect Acadia. According to the National Park Service, President Charles Eliot of Harvard and George B. Dorr, both were summer residents, began to solicit gifts of land from residents to save the island. These lands, given to the United States, became the first national park to be composed of entirely gifts from individuals. And Mr. Rockefeller also gave 2,700 acres to round out the park. This is why today tourists and summer people get to enjoy the major sightseeing locations because of this effort. And now I will highlight some of these sightseeing locations for you. Starting out with Somme Sound, which from the air is a breathtaking view. In order to get a good look of it, you would have to like sail up into it or charter a sailboat, but it's definitely a unique part of the island because it was carved out from the glaciers a long time ago. That's why the island looks like the short horseshoe shape that it has. And also, it's important to note that Bar Harbor Chamber of Commerce states that it's the only fjord in the northeastern U.S. And then we have Cadillac Mountain, which the Bar Harbor Chamber of Commerce lets us know that it's 1,532 feet and it's the highest coastal point on the East Coast. And you can also drive up it, and a lot of people like to see the sun rise since it's the first point on the eastern coast where the sun rises, especially for New Year's. Third, we have the Park Loop Road and Carriage Road, which John D. Rockefeller was a major innovator of. We have Sand Beach, which is a very, very popular beach. Fifth, we have the Jordan Pond House and the view of Bubble Pond. At the Jordan Pond House, you can enjoy the very popular popovers and tea with lobster bisque. And sixth sightseeing highlight would be Precipice Trail and Precipice Mountain, which it's closed for July because of the peregrine falcons that breed there, but it is the most challenging hike on the island. In fact, there has been several deaths that have occurred there. And what would this informative essay be if I didn't let you know about any of the recreational activities? So, of course, there's hiking and biking on various trails. You can actually go on a hike on one of the trails and not see another human being the entire hike. There's that many trails on this island, which is a great thing to know because sometimes you just want that solitude and peace and to be out in nature. But then sometimes you want to, do other outgoing activities as well. There's sailing, there's fishing on ocean and on lakes. There's camping and RVing and kayaking. In fact, a lot of the campsites on the island are booked up a year in advance or well more than that. There's actually rock climbing. There's swimming in the lakes. And you can swim in the ocean, but it's very, very cold. And there's also a lot of restaurants and bars in Bar Harbor and all the other surrounding harbors that are on the island as well. A lot of people like to go out and get their fresh Maine lobster cooked for them, and so they can enjoy that. As you can see from the abundance of information on Acadia, this very well likely would not have been made possible without the historical elements and people, beautiful scenery, and numerous recreational activities that won the title of America's favorite place.